Well, the first one that comes to me is something that happened in a depth hypnosis session where I was working with um, a senior student who had gone through the depth hypnosis training program and had also gone through all of the training to become an applied shamanic practitioner as well. And that includes a lot of advanced practices. In the advanced class, we learn about channeling and mediumship. And in the depth hypnosis program, we learn how to move across time with regression therapy to help people get into the roots of the issues that they are having on the surface level. So we may be working in a previous time. In this lifetime, we might be working in in utero. We might be working even in a past life experience. And so I was working with this student, and she'd done a lot of work on herself, but she was having this kind of, it wasn't kind of, it was an experience of an unrelenting grief. And it just would not, she couldn't shake it. And so we decided with depth hypnosis, the way that depth hypnosis works is before we do any of the deeper altered state work, we help you connect with a part of the self that has only your highest good as its sole intent. And you can experience this part of yourself as a plant or an animal or a light or a sound or a mythic or angelic being, any form that has meaning to you. And when you connect with that part of yourself, that acts as an anchor or as a safe harbor to return to when you begin to look at the deeper issues. You were talking about having a guide with you in terms of a practitioner, but also in depth hypnosis, there's also a guide that is arising within you that you are recognizing and that you are working with as you go more deeply into some of the more complicated issues like grief. So we went in on the experience of grief. And what we do in depth hypnosis is whatever the presenting issue is, we will, with the help of that part of the self that has only your highest good, we will establish where that grief is in your body as you move into the altered state of awareness. And then we will help you establish an understanding of that physical sensation in an experience of energy. And then we follow that energetic experience to the situation, time, or place where it first or most significantly occurred. So this is what we did with the grief. We went in on the grief. She felt it very strongly in her heart. And she breathed into her heart and found that it was like this path that opened up, like a dirt path that opened up in her heart. And we wound up in, she wasn't sure exactly where she was, but there was a lot of people around her that were grieving. And she began to say, she's from the Jewish tradition, and she began to say the prayers that are related to the services for grief. And so she was saying the prayers. I recognize the prayers. I'm not of the Jewish tradition, but I recognize that the prayers because I've been to Jewish services. And so she began saying them, and there was all this energy came into the room, and it was, I was like, wow, there's a lot going on here. And I began to feel the presence of other beings, and I began to feel the way that they were moving in through the prayers and moving through the prayers and moving out and moving into a more fine vibratory experience. And as she was saying this, I began to get understanding that we were in a concentration camp, and that's what all these people were. And at the time, and she was so involved with saying the prayers, and she was finally able to say, I think I'm in a concentration camp. All of the images were there. And so then all of a sudden everything shifted, and another set of prayers was said. And again, we had all of these beings moving through the session, moving through the prayers and moving out into a finer vibratory rate. And again, that shifted, and there was a slightly different kind of voice, but the same prayers. And as this happened, the shift happened 3 more times. And I began to realize, as the practitioner, I'm just there grounding and holding and calling all of the power that I have to be able to support her process. Because what she was doing, what we realized at the end, was that she had been channeling all of these different rabbis who had been caring for the people in the concentration camps, but had not been able to say the Shiva, the prayers for the people who had died properly because they were not able to have the services. And so what they were doing is they were coming through her, because she had done all the study about mediumship and she had a grounded, strong connection with internal guidance, and she had a knowledge of the Jewish tradition. And so they were working with her, and the grief that she had was the grief of her own family, who had also, many of them died in the camps. And so she was having this opportunity to be able to offer herself as a vehicle to offer this path toward liberation for not only all the people that the rabbis had longed to be able to say the prayers to, but for the rabbis themselves to be able to lay down that burden of not having had the opportunity to help these people move along their journey into death in a more held and sacred way. So this happened with 6 different rabbis, with 6 different groups of people that they had been serving in different camps. And at this probably took about almost 2 hours. And at the end of it, as it ended, there was all of this light. There was light all the way through, but then there was this kind of like very diffuse rainbow clear light that just filled the room and filled her. And she was infused with it. And of course, she was tears streaming down her face. And, I was, doing, I was doing my best to hold all of the process for her so that she could come out of it and move back into ordinary state of awareness. And I guided her back in. And we sat there in silence, for, a good half an hour, just letting it all calibrate in. And for me, that was miraculous that she had the training to understand the Jewish tradition, that she had the training to understand mediumship and all the processes of transmutation and transformation that shamanic practice facilitates, and that she had the training in depth hypnosis to understand how you move across time and space with the processes of depth hypnosis, and that she had her own experience of grief that needed healing, and that her own experience became a vehicle not only for her own healing, but for all of the healing of all of these people in time and space who had been unable to move into the further journeys that their souls were taking them in, and that she was able to serve these rabbis who were absolutely liberated and relieved of a terrible burden. And so there was all these different layers of healing across time, across space, across circumstance. And it all started with this grief that she had been it was like a hairball that she had been trying to cough up. And when we came into the depth hypnosis session and provided that channel for that grief to emerge, this is what happened. And I think that's a pretty good description of the way that depth hypnosis works and the way that we work as human beings in terms of the things that we're connected to, in terms of our own personal experience, the way that it reverberates with the experience of those around us, and all of the possibilities there are in healing and transformation that exist even in the darkest places.